We're live. It's Con Carne in quarantine. It's quarantine Con Carne. I'm James Van Oslo. Right there, that's Jace from Church Street Brewing over
Hi,
in
guys.
Itasca. Good evening, Jace.
Good evening.
I want you get an award. You get a medal for tonight. We have gone through so many technology hoops just to be here. I'm very proud of. I feel like we've been through the war together. Like
Sure.
been through and seen so much together, and now we're
Already.
together talking about
Yep.
Church Street. I set out this week initially to do a week of independent breweries, and I'm going to push that mostly to next week. But the idea being, you guys have been slugging it out. It's been really tough through the pandemic, and I want to just remind people that you exist and
Sure.
talk about the brewery. So without even bearing the lead, Church Street Brewing is at 1480 Industrial Drive in Itasca.
Yeah.
And to get beer, to go to your place and run away with a 4-pack, what do they need to do? What are the hours? What are
Since the patio just opened, they could either come in and grab a 4-pack to go, or actually we are doing patio service right now.
Nice.
So we're open every day from noon to 8, except for Sundays, which is noon to 6. You can either go to our online store, just go to our website and hit order beer and pick it up. We do deliveries and shipment as well. So you can, even if you don't want to get out of the house, you can still get our beer. Or just if it's a nice day out, you can come out and enjoy the patio.
Love it. And your title is sales manager?
Sure. Sales
Sure.
manager.
That's really an independent brewery. The titles are kind of fluid and
yeah.
whatever's needed that day, right?
Yeah, exactly. You wear a lot of hats. Really, before I came on board, Lisa Greger is our owner. We're an all-female owned and operated brewery, one of the few ones out there. And she was doing everything. And so when I came on board, anything she couldn't get to is then what I started doing. So at the beginning, that was a lot of sales. Outside sales, helping manage festivals, tasting, stuff like that. And then we hired some really good people to help on that end. And then I started taking over the tap room, and everybody there has been great, trained well. And so now we're moving towards our expansion. And so right now I am Jace demolition expert.
Sweet.
So, yeah.
So tell me about the expansion. I've been to your place. I mean, there's clearly room to grow.
Oh, yeah. So a little bit of both. We started 8 years ago, and 8 years ago, tap rooms were really kind of a gray area. Legally, people really didn't, I guess governments didn't realize that people would want to show up to a manufacturing place, a production place, and want to sample the product without having an in-between buyer. You don't go to the Ford dealership. You go to a Ford dealership to buy a Ford. You don't go to the manufacturing plant. So it's kind of weird, I guess, for them to realize how they wanted to tax you, because that's really what holds back laws, right? Like, how am I going to get my money out of it? So once they realized that they could tax this efficiently, then tap rooms just started popping up everywhere. But we were just before that. So we're a big production brewery, a huge 30-barrel brewery with 16 30-barrel fermenters. We can make a lot of beer. We make beer for ourselves. We do a lot of contract brewing. And the tap room really was an afterthought. So there was just 4 little tables there, and we've really grown a lot since then. And if you've ever come in, when you walk in, it really has that feel of like Solemn Oath. The same thing when you walk in. There's a couple of places you could stand or sit, but then it's really, you're just in the brewery.
Yep.
Yeah. And same with the location. I remember when I was first going to Solemn Oath, their parking lot was still gravel. So, getting there, you're like, where am I going? Same with us. We have people all the time, they'll call and go, yeah, I think I'm here. And you're like, well, just follow the signs. We have to have them posted on all the other buildings to try to get people in. But what we're doing now is the tenants that were in the building that we shared the building with have moved out. So we're taking over their space, and we're just creating a much larger tap room, adding a kitchen, a barrel room, a lab, a to-go sales area. Just a lot more room, really.
And that's a lot to oversee.
Oh, yeah, sure, absolutely. And we really were, in the last 2 years that I've been there, we've had parties that had 1,200 people show up. We do a lot of huge events. We held our own beer festival. So we're used to the amount of people, but now we actually have the space so that everybody can kind of enjoy themselves and not be bumping into one another.
Well, when you turn right onto Industrial Drive, you're like, is this the right area? Am I going to the right place? Oh no,
Exactly.
this is exactly the right place. And once
Yep,
you're
all
there,
the way back. Yep.
I,
Yeah, and
I love it.
that's another thing. Like, we don't have some of the privileges other breweries have of being on Main Street and actually being a little bit smaller too. So you really don't have to have as many people coming in and drinking your beer to go through it. We're a huge production facility, so we have to sell our beer out of state, across the country, and then we also need a ton of people to come into the tap room to really push that beer and get new and better beers all the time. Because we can't just make 5 barrels of like this new, cool, interesting beer that may or may not work. Can't do that because you have to make a 30 barrel batch of beer is going to be successful and really hope people really like it. So it's
So
kind of a challenge.
how have things been in 2020 through the pandemic?
So actually, I was in Belgium when everything locked down. So wow. Lisa was really kind of freaking out. She didn't have her right-hand man with her, and she knew that when I came back, I'd have to be in lockdown for 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, her husband, who's a chemical engineer, came up with a way of making hand sanitizer, the same way we kind of make our beer. Well, not the same way, but using the same equipment. So we started to produce that. Meanwhile, I'm at home for 2 weeks and I'm really setting up the infrastructure of how to sell it. So our online store, which before nobody was really buying 4-packs online and then coming and picking them up. That just wasn't a thing. And now all of a sudden we needed to have that as an option. So setting all that up took a little while. And once we got up and running, it was a huge success. We actually sold more in beer, dollar per dollar, than we did in the weeks before the lockdown. Wow. So we really had a lot of people show their support for us. And it's interesting, right? You're not just going to get 1 4-pack. You're going to get 2 or 3. So you're thinking you're buying 12 beers, but if you were to visit us on a normal day, you'd buy maybe 2, unless you're there for a party and you're really kind of getting crazy. You might limit it to just a couple. So every customer that came in was actually spending a little bit more than they would on a normal visit, which helps. And then we just had a lot of people. We had some people donating. We had some people that were just like, throw whatever merch you have up on the internet and we'll buy it. We'll buy gift cards. We saw a lot of support, which is really good to see because before all this, we would host every week, every Wednesday, we would do like a charity Wednesday where 20% of the proceeds and profits would go to a local charity. So we really always felt like we were very tied to the community and always liked to give back. And then when we needed help, all those people came out and supported us. So it was really good to see.
And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do a lot for independent breweries. That sense of community, being part of the community, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lisa has lived in Itasca for 40 years. I mean, all of her kids went to school there. They swam for Itasca. I mean, they're part of the community. So,
and Itasca on its own, pretty small suburb, but you're surrounded by Schaumburg and Addison and lots of bigger communities that I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of so Schaumburg's real big up north. We get a lot of people from Schaumburg, Elk Grove. A lot of where we're at, though, they're kind of like the really nice golf places. So you have like Medina is right there. Bloomingdale is right there. Woodridge, stuff like that, Itasca. So they're all just kind of smaller, but known for kind of being that way, more golf and I don't know, not as much big city stuff.
Let's talk a little bit about the beer. The one I'm holding right here, Devil's Advocate. If you drink a 4-pack of this, your night's over.
Whenever I first started working at the brewery, that was my favorite beer. I love Belgian ales. That one actually won 4th best Belgian beer in the world in last year, 2019. So that's pretty impressive. We were the only American brewery to make the list of the top 10. And so that was pretty good. And that's by Beer Connoisseur. They put out the top 250 beers in the world every year. So I was drinking that and I realized that I had to switch to something that was a little bit lighter one night when I was, kind of doing this on the way home. And I was like, man, that's not good. And then I started taking it home with me, and then I would wake up naked on the couch going, what the hell happened? Because it is just, we make a lot of beer that we call crushable. We just want you to be able to enjoy multiple of them, and we do a lot of light lagers. So again, just real light crushable beers, but they can really sneak up on you. The worst one right now, well, not the worst, but the one that will sneak up on you the most right now is our new Egg Lay. It's a Baltic porter, which a lot of people don't realize is actually a lager. So we add that to our set of lagers, which we do a ton of lagers. A lot of other breweries don't do that. They're a little bit harder. They take a little bit longer. But the Egg Lay is a dark Baltic porter. It's 9.5%, but it drinks kind of like a Schwarzbier. It drinks just kind of like a black lager. So when you drink it, it just kind of tastes like our Helles with coffee. And you have one of those, and oh man, yeah, you're out for the count.
So a safer bet, kind of a gateway beer, would probably be Heavenly Hells, right?
Yeah, the Heavenly Helles. It's won Chicago's Best, I think, 4 times in the last 8 years that we've had it. It was one of our first beers. It's the oldest beer that we continue to make. It hasn't had a whole lot of changes over the past 8 years, but yeah, definitely that's what kind of people knew us for. They still do. Whenever I came on board 2 years ago, we definitely were looking for a facelift. And so we moved everything to cans. We redid all of our artwork. Like you can see on yours, instead of just being a red label, it's a great artwork. And we really pushed our beers too. Yeah, sure.
Because I really pushed the aesthetic of what's on your cans, I think helps sell the beer.
Oh yeah. We realized that. You have to think 8 years ago, there were 30 craft breweries. We were like one of the first 30 craft breweries in all of Illinois, not just Chicagoland, but all of Illinois. So if you had craft beer on a shelf, it didn't matter what it looked like. Now you go to Benny's and you're really arguing, you're really competing for space on that shelf. And when nobody knows you whatsoever, they have to be drawn to your can somehow, even if it's just to read what kind of beer it is. So yeah. We definitely had to make that change. And then we started doing some beers that weren't so traditional, because we were first it was German traditional, then it was European traditional, and then it was, okay, let's do American IPAs, but traditionally. But even though everything we do is very traditional, we don't really do a lot of lactose or additives outside the tap room, where we'll kind of get a little nutty. We have kind of invaded more areas of beer styles, which we used to not. So Helles used to be the only thing we're known for. Now we had last year, like I said, the 4th best Belgian in the world. We had our Brucifer, which is an Imperial Hazy IPA that won Illinois' best Hazy IPA. Our Oktoberfest, going back to the traditional Germans, it was voted the best European lager last year for Illinois. So a little bit of traditional, a little bit of new.
Let's go back to the Brucifer, the IPA. What's the difference between that IPA and Little Lucy?
So they're ultimately very similar. Brucifer is formerly known as Jucifer, but we were told we were no longer allowed to call it that by New Belgium, and then they sold like the next week. So we changed everything, and then it wouldn't have mattered. They even sent us a letter saying that they had discontinued Jucifer. So I don't know if they were rubbing it in or what, but we changed everything. And then we realized, 9.2% is a lot, and we wanted maybe a session version. Not a lot of people are out there doing incredibly hop forward beers that are light in alcohol. And so we made one that was just right at 5%, and that's the Little Lucy. And that actually, when it first came out, everybody who was so in love with the Brucifer at the brewery, hated Little Lucy, right? Because it was watered down. It just didn't have the same flavor. But then after a couple of people were going home like this, they realized, okay, I'll switch over. And then it's become our most popular IPA. Medina Country Club uses it as their golf course IPA. Yeah. The Schaumburg Boomers, the baseball stadium, they use it as their house IPA. Even Medieval Times uses it as their house IPA. So it's a very versatile session hazy IPA that everybody just kind of likes.
Love it. All right. So Jace, Church Street Brewing Company, righteously good beer. ChurchStreetBrew.com is the website. 1480 Industrial Drive. Patio is up and running.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm sure that you were all very excited once you were able to do that.
We loved it. Yeah, we loved having it open and actually being able to pour a draft beer. That was just something that you don't realize you miss until you don't do it for a while. And to be able to pour it and hand it to somebody, even if you have gloves and a mask on, it was still pretty cool.
Love it. All right. Well, thanks for joining. Thank you, everybody who's been watching on Facebook Live. And it is Con Carne.
Thanks for having me.